Hi friends, welcome to another Read Aloud. We have our friends Felicia Bear, right there, and Mr. Mix-Up. How are you doing today, friends? I'm pretty good, Miss Barone. How about you, Felicia Bear? How are you feeling? She looks sad. Doesn't Felicia Bear look sad? She looks unhappy. Felicia Bear, what's wrong? I wish you would fix my bow. It's hanging in my eyes and I can't see. Oh, I'm sorry, Felicia Bear. I will sew her bow back into place the next time you see her friends. Actually, Livy pointed that out to me the other day, that her bow needed fixin'. So I will fix it for you, Felicia Bear. Okay? You ready for story time? Yes, now I'm ready. Okay, friends, I hope you're ready. So, you know what to do for story time, right? You tell me. What do? We sit in listening position. Yes. We sit with our backs up straight. Remember our posture. It helps our core, our stomach muscles sitting up straight. Okay, so today I have this story for you. The title is What About Ladybugs? Are you ready? Okie dokie. What about ladybugs? The gardener looked all around his garden, and he liked what he saw. There were hardy vegetables, brightly colored flowers, and fruit trees that made the air smell sweet. There were many kinds of insects in the garden, too. Ladybugs and wasps, bees and butterflies, aphids and ants. The gardener thought about all those insects. He knew that bees and butterflies helped the garden grow. As they flew from flower to flower, drinking nectar, they picked up a fine yellow dust called pollen, which the flowers produced. By carrying pollen from one flower to another, the bees and butterflies helped the flowers produce seeds for new plants. Though the butterflies were helpful, the gardener knew that their young, the caterpillars, were not. They often damaged plants by eating the leaves. The ants and wasps in the garden were harmful in one way but helpful in another. They sometimes nibbled on ripe fruit before the gardener got around to picking it, but they also helped the garden by eating harmful insects. There was no question about the aphids, though. The gardener knew they were bad for the garden because they sucked plant juices and spread diseases. He didn't know much about the bright red ladybugs, but he thought they were special and was very fond of them. One day the gardener had an idea. If I get rid of the bad insects, he thought, my garden will be perfect. So the next day the gardener sprayed the fruit trees, the vegetables, and the flowers. He used a spray gun filled with bug killer. Right here. As the gardener sprayed the poison, the bees, ants, and wasps hid in their nests to protect themselves. But the ladybugs didn't have any nests, so they flew away in a great red cloud. The aphids didn't have nests either, but without wings they couldn't fly away. They hid under the leaves in the garden. When the gardener finished spraying, the aphids crept out of their hiding places and went back to work. Many of them died from the poison, but others survived. The aphids sucked the juice out of leaves and tender plant stems. Some of the juice passed through their bodies and turned into a sweet, sticky liquid called honeydew. Soon it seemed there were more aphids than ever before. As they multiplied, they sucked more and more plant juice, wasn't long before the plants in the garden were coated with sticky honeydew, which ants love. The ants milked the aphids by stroking them with their feelers. This made the aphids squeeze out honeydew, which the ants then licked up. There were so many ants going to get honeydew from the aphids that the gardener began to see ant trails all over the garden. The bees in the garden liked honeydew too. It was easier for the bees to lick honeydew from the plants to make their honey than it was for them to go from flower to flower collecting nectar. Let's think about that. It was easier for the bees to lick honeydew from the plants to make their honey than it was for them to go from flower to flower collecting nectar. Isn't that the natural way for a bee to collect nectar, right? By flying into a flower and gathering it? Yeah, it's not by eating honeydew. Besides, there were fewer flowers now. The plants had become too sick to make many flowers because of the damage the aphids had done. With fewer flowers, there were fewer butterflies visiting the garden, but there were still many caterpillars. They stayed in the garden, eating leaves until they grew big enough to turn into butterflies and fly away. Look at all those holes in the leaves. Do you see all these holes? What do you suppose those are? And who is making those holes? What kind of insect is eating? I bet you it's the caterpillars, and they're killing the leaves. Not only were the plants too sick to make many flowers, the fruit trees were too sick to produce much fruit. Wasps buzzed angrily about, fighting over what little fruit there was. And all the while, the aphids continued to multiply. There were so many, in fact, that they were crowded together on the plants, fighting one another for food and space. Many plants were so covered with honeydew that they grew moldy. Do you know what that word moldy means? It means they grew old and it had this fine furry gray covering over it, and it was yucky and old and sick and blech. Yucky. The gardener knew that something was terribly wrong. The garden had few flowers, the fruit trees had little fruit, and the vegetables were shriveled up and wilted. The plants were covered with aphids. There were ant hills and ant trails everywhere. The wasps were becoming a nuisance. The butterflies had all but disappeared. Even the bees' honey tasted strange because they had made it from honeydew instead of nectar. The natural order of things is all jumbled up and wonky, friends. He's trying to figure it out. See him standing here? He can't figure it out. The gardener didn't know what to do. He could see that spraying with poison had been a mistake. He understood now that all the life in his garden was linked somehow, that the plants and insects depended on one another to survive. What about ladybugs? A friend suggested. What about them? The gardener asked. Ladybugs are nature's way of controlling aphids, the friend replied, and she gave him an address from which to order a supply of ladybugs. When the box of ladybugs arrived, the gardener took it out to the garden, opened it, and left it in a shady spot under a tree. One by one, the ladybugs flew or crawled out of the box. Soon they were all over the garden. Golly, look at the number of ladybugs there. My land. The ladybugs ate all the aphids they could find. They ate and 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 ate, and after a while, the garden began to recover. The plants grew stronger and healthier. When the following summer came, the gardener looked all around his garden. Once again, there were hearty vegetables, brightly colored flowers, and lots of sweet, ripe fruit. The butterflies were back, the ants and wasps had settled down, and the bees were making delicious honey. Everything was as it should be. The gardener smiled. He had always known there was something special about ladybugs. So that's a question for you, friends. What's special about ladybugs? How do insects, like a ladybug, how do insects help or harm nature? Think about that. Okay? I will see you next time. Bye.